a new message related to the possible abduction of Nancy Guthrie. The 84-year-old mother of Savannah Guthrie disappeared from her home 6 days ago. Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today's Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, vanished from her Catalina Foothills home in Tucson, Arizona, in the early hours of February 1, 2026. What began as a missing persons report quickly escalated into one of the most gripping abduction investigations in recent American memory. Weeks stretched into months, and with every press conference, every search warrant, and every viral social media thread, new names and new questions emerged. Now, attention is shifted to a detail buried in plain sight long before any of this began. In this video, we will find out the truth. Who is Annie Guthrie? And why does her message to Tommaso Cioni matter? When the name Annie Guthrie first appeared in coverage of her mother's disappearance, most viewers knew little about her. Savannah Guthrie was the familiar face, the NBC anchor who had anchored morning television for over a decade. But Annie, the eldest daughter of Nancy Guthrie, occupied a quieter corner of public life. She is a poet, jeweler, and teacher at the University of Arizona Poetry Center in Tucson. Her work focuses on consciousness, spirituality, and the inner life, documented in her debut poetry collection published through Tupelo Press. She also runs courses in what she calls oracular writing, mentoring students who want to deepen their artistic practice. None of this prepared the public for the scrutiny that would follow her mother's disappearance. Annie Guthrie and her husband Tommaso Cioni are residents of Tucson and live not far from Nancy's home. Cioni, who is around 50 years old and of Italian descent, has worked as a biology teacher at a local school and has also participated in a Tucson-based band. Annie described him with striking warmth in a 2013 interview with Women's Quarterly Conversation, where she called him her greatest teacher and said he was a poet who wrote poetry with his lifestyle. That interview went largely unnoticed for over a decade. Then Nancy disappeared. According to authorities, Nancy Guthrie traveled by Uber to the home of Annie and Tommaso on the evening of January 31st for dinner and a family board game before Cioni dropped her safely at her own home. That drop-off placed Cioni and Annie among the last people to see Nancy before she vanished. What followed was an immediate wave of public speculation amplified by social media that pointed fingers at the couple. Journalist Ashley Banfield on her podcast claimed a law enforcement source told her Cioni might be a prime suspect. That claim was never verified by any official agency. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos stepped in roughly 2 weeks after the disappearance and issued an unambiguous public statement clearing the entire Guthrie family, including all siblings and their spouses. His words carried weight. He described the family as nothing but cooperative and gracious, called them victims in the case, and directed pointed frustration at media outlets that had suggested otherwise. He asked journalists to report with compassion and professionalism, yet despite that official clearing, online theories continued to circulate. And then something happened that sent a new wave of speculation racing across social media. An excerpt from Annie Guthrie's published poetry collection began recirculating online nearly 4 months after her mother's disappearance. The passage that went viral was a personal acknowledgement at the front of the book, in which Annie wrote directly to her husband, Tommaso Cioni, my heart, root and bone. That line, tender and poetic on its face, became fuel for renewed speculation. But it was not the only name in that acknowledgement that captured attention. Someone named Charlie was also mentioned nearby, and that reference ignited an entirely separate strand of questioning. Why would a line from a poetry book published years before Nancy's disappearance suddenly matter so much? That question reveals something important about how information travels in a high-profile missing persons case. When an investigation stretches beyond 100 days without a named suspect, the public begins searching every available surface for patterns. A dedication page becomes a clue. A name in an acknowledgement becomes a theory. The lack of official answers creates a vacuum, and the internet fills that vacuum with everything it can find. So who exactly is Charlie? And why does the name keep appearing in connection with this case? What does the evidence actually show? The name Charlie entered public discussion through the same resurfaced book excerpt that brought renewed attention to Annie's message to Tommaso Cioni. Social media users noted that the acknowledgement section of Annie Guthrie's poetry collection included a reference to someone named Charlie, alongside family members and her husband. That proximity triggered immediate questions. Who was Charlie? Could Charlie be connected to the kidnapping? Was this a name investigators should be looking at more closely? The speculation spread quickly, particularly on platforms where true crime communities gather and theorize. Screenshots circulated showing the dedication page. Users analyzed the phrasing around Charlie's name, searching for hidden meaning in a literary acknowledgement written years before any of this unfolded. Some speculated that Charlie was a figure close to the family. Others suggested the name corresponded to an individual who had access to the family's social circle in Tucson. None of these theories carried official weight. As of the latest updates available, no official documents, statements from law enforcement, or verified reports have connected anyone named Charlie to the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping investigation, nor the Pima County Sheriff's Department has named any individual, whether called Charlie or otherwise, as a suspect, witness, or person of interest. That absence of official confirmation matters. It separates verified reporting from speculation. One important context point is often lost in the online noise. Nancy Guthrie's late father was named Charles Guthrie, and Annie's family grew up knowing him by that name before his death in 1988 during a mining exploration trip in Mexico. Charles Guthrie died at age 49. Savannah was 16 at the time. It is entirely plausible that the Charlie referenced in Annie's acknowledgments was a tribute to her late father, or to another cherished person in her personal life, rather than any figure connected to current events. Literary acknowledgments routinely express gratitude to people who shaped an author, including those who are no longer living. Annie Guthrie's book, published by Tupelo Press, explores consciousness, mystical experience, and the interior self through a sequence of lyric poems structured in 3 acts. The work received literary praise for its metaphysical depth and emotional precision. Reading its acknowledgments as a roadmap to a kidnapping investigation stretches the limits of reasonable inference. Yet that is precisely what happened online, and it is precisely why the question keeps resurfacing. What does this pattern reveal? It reveals the intense public hunger for answers in a case where official answers have been slow to arrive. The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department have been jointly investigating the disappearance since February 2026, processing tens of thousands of tips from the public. No suspects have been named. The reward now stands at over $1 million from the Guthrie family, with an additional $100,000 offered by the FBI, and still the case remains open. In that environment, a name in a book dedication becomes a theory worth chasing. It says more about the desperation for resolution than it does about any credible lead. But beneath all this speculation, the actual documented facts of this investigation are far more chilling than anything a book dedication could suggest. Stay glued till the very end. What the investigation has actually established since February 2026. Setting aside the theories, what has the investigation officially produced? A careful look at confirmed facts paints a detailed and genuinely disturbing picture of what happened at Nancy Guthrie's Catalina Foothills home in the early hours of February 1, 2026. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942 in Fort Wright, Kentucky, and had lived in the Tucson area for more than 5 decades. She was known by family and neighbors as mentally sharp, independent, and deeply rooted in her community. She lived alone and was described by her children as someone who rarely wandered far from home, particularly given persistent physical pain that limited her mobility. Family members have noted she could barely walk to her mailbox. The idea that she simply wandered off was, from the beginning, considered implausible by those who knew her. 10 days after her disappearance, FBI Director Kash Patel released surveillance footage showing a masked and armed individual tampering with Nancy's front door camera in the early hours of February 1st. The suspect, described as male and between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 10 inches tall with an average build, was carrying a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack backpack. The footage showed deliberate, methodical behavior. The individual used branches to obstruct the camera's view. Former FBI agent Johnny Grusing, analyzing the footage publicly, observed that the suspect appeared to be attempting to shield himself from view while potentially trying to get Nancy to come to the door, suggesting prior knowledge of the property layout. Blood was found at the front entrance to Nancy's home and down her driveway. That physical evidence confirmed that whatever happened on Nancy's porch was not peaceful. Authorities have not publicly disclosed whether blood was found inside the home. A glove was recovered approximately 2 miles from the residence. DNA extracted from that glove was submitted to the National CODIS database, but returned no match. DNA collected separately from inside Nancy's home also returned no CODIS match. Both samples remain in active analysis. The FBI recently sent DNA samples recovered from the scene to an outside lab for additional testing. Sources familiar with the investigation told ABC News that investigators are treating the DNA as potentially critical evidence. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed that the lab already holds reference DNA from Nancy, her family members, her landscaper, and her housekeeper, allowing investigators to eliminate known individuals and isolate any foreign profiles. On May 25, 2026, a pajama top was discovered in a desert area approximately 30 minutes from Nancy's home. Pima County Sheriff's Office detectives arrived at the scene and collected the item as evidence. The discovery raised immediate questions, particularly about the timeline of when Nancy was taken from her property and whether she was wearing pajamas at the time of her abduction, suggesting she may have been taken in the middle of the night rather than drawn outside willingly. Sheriff Nanos has stated publicly that he believes the abduction was targeted, not random. He has indicated awareness of a possible motive while refusing to disclose specifics, saying only that the family and the broader community are not necessarily safe if the suspect remains at large. Former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, commenting on the case publicly, raised the possibility of a planned abduction tied to the family's high public profile, while also noting investigators could not rule out a home invasion that escalated into kidnapping. Multiple theories remain active simultaneously. The investigation has also been marked by internal tensions. Pima County Sergeant Aaron Cross described the first week of the investigation as a disorganized mess during an interview with journalist Brian Entin in May 2026. Cross also made remarks suggesting the Guthrie family initially believed Nancy may have wandered off, a claim directly at odds with public statements made by Savannah Guthrie, who said Annie and Tommaso were insistent from the very beginning that Nancy could not have walked away. The Pima County Deputies Union later issued an apology clarifying that the family had actually believed Nancy might have been taken to a hospital, not that she had wandered off voluntarily. The episode added confusion to an already fraught public narrative. The family's response, the reward, and the road forward. Throughout 4 months of uncertainty, the Guthrie family has operated in full public view while enduring the most private kind of anguish. Their response to Nancy's disappearance has been measured, coordinated, and deeply human, shaped by the particular pressure of being a family with a famous member while trying to function as a unit in grief.